Welcome back to month 2 of our community groups. Throughout the next several meetings, we're going to continue to look at the identity statements that we find in the book of John. So Jesus is constantly revealing himself in different ways. At one point in the book of John, he says that he's the good shepherd. Last month, we looked at when he said he was the vine and we are the branch. And this month, we're going to be looking at the time when he says that he is the bread of life. And so we can find this in John chapter 6. And what has happened right before this conversation we're getting ready to read is Jesus has just fed the 5,000. So he's given them a physical miracle with physical food and physical sustenance. And so now we're going to see how the people respond to Jesus, even though he's just performed this miracle, and he's going to give them something better than this physical food. So let's start in John chapter 6, verse 30. It says, "So they said to Jesus, 'What then are you doing as a sign so that we may see and believe you? What work are you performing? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread out of heaven to eat.'" Let's stop there for a moment, because remember, in the same chapter, Jesus has just given them literal bread to eat. He's just performed a miracle that they're asking him to perform. And what it shows is that, again, the Jews didn't quite understand what Jesus' purpose on earth was. His purpose wasn't just to be a good person, to perform good miracles. His purpose wasn't just to give them physical food and physical supplies. His purpose was to give them something far more. And so he's not going to perform another miracle, another temporal miracle that will give them food for a little bit and then they'll get hungry again. He's actually going to point to something greater than physical food. He's actually going to point to something greater than even the manna that Moses gave in the wilderness. So let's continue reading. It says, "Jesus then said to them, 'Truly, truly, I say to you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread out of heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread out of heaven. For the bread of God is that which comes down out of heaven and gives life to the world.' Then they said to him, 'Lord, always give us this bread.' Jesus said to them, 'I am the bread of life. The one who comes to me will not be hungry, and the one who believes in me will never be thirsty.'" So what is Jesus saying here? He is comparing himself to the manna that Moses gave in the wilderness. So if you recall, right after Israel got out of Egypt, the way that the Lord supplied them with food was he brought manna down from heaven. And if you remember, manna would come down out of heaven every day. And it was a test to the Israelites to see if they would trust God, because what they were supposed to do was they were only supposed to gather enough manna to last them for one day. And if they didn't trust God and they gathered for 2 days, then the next morning they'd wake up and any leftover manna would be spoiled and rotten and bugs would be growing in it. And it was a test. And Israel failed the test. They did not trust the Lord and they gathered more than they needed. But on the Sabbath day, manna was not going to come down from heaven. So they were instructed that the day before the Sabbath, they could get 2 days worth of manna. And they could eat enough for the day that before the Sabbath, and then when the Sabbath came, that manna would not be spoiled the next day. Now, if they try to save it for the day after the Sabbath, it would get spoiled, but it was a test. Every day they were supposed to wait and trust in the Lord that he would bring manna. And so what is Jesus comparing himself to? He's not comparing himself to the manna that they had to collect every day and would be spoiled the next day. He's not even comparing himself to the manna of the Sabbath, where it would be good for 2 days. Because in the book of Exodus, right in that chapter about manna, we see a third manna. And God instructs Moses and Aaron in that chapter to take some manna and to put it in a jar. And this jar would be a sign to all generations, that this manna would last for generations to come. And they would actually end up putting this manna in the tabernacle and in the temple, again, as a reminder of Yahweh, of God. And so we have these 3 kinds of manna. The one that would be for every day, the one that would last for the Sabbath, would last for 2 days, and then we have this eternal manna, this manna that would remain, that would last, that would not spoil even for generations to come. So which of those 3 is Jesus? Well, certainly he's the one that's going to last. And the Jews wanted Jesus to give them temporary food. They wanted him to do something that was quick, that would satisfy them immediately. And he's actually saying, I'm not the manna who's good for today and tomorrow will be spoiled. I'm not even the manna who will be good for 2 days. I am the manna that's going to last. I am the manna that's going to be eternal. And in the book of Revelation, it ties a nice bow on the whole story of manna that we've been seeing in Scripture. And it says in Revelation 2, "To the one who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna." So what is being said here? Revelation is connecting this theme of manna that we've seen now throughout Scripture, and it's saying to the person who overcomes, to the person who continues to have faith despite the challenges, who conquers, that person's going to be able to eat of the hidden manna. That person's going to eat the bread of life, Jesus, right? That in him is where we're going to find our satisfaction. And the one who has faith understands that. The one who has faith recognizes that this life that we live now, it's not just for what we see today. It's not just for what we get to experience today. It impacts eternity. And the things that we invest in eternity, that's what's going to last, right? Like the life that we're living for Jesus, that's what's going to last. And it's why Paul can say in Philippians that he counts everything else as lost in light of the cause of Christ, in light of the mission. And his aim is to glorify Jesus with everything he's doing, so much so that he can look at the things of the world. He can look at his old life and he can count it as lost. He can count it as dung, is what he says, as garbage. That it means nothing to him, not in light of the majesty and the magnificence of who Jesus is. As Christians, we have this bread of life that is eternal, that is satisfying. So why do we continue to put our hope, to put our efforts and our energy and our time in the temporary, in the things that will not last? And sometimes we can get so caught up in the here and now. We can get caught up in spending our finances and investing our money in the here and now. We can get caught up in spending our time in the here and now, but those are going to fade away. And the things that we do for Jesus, man, those things are going to last. Those things are going to last for eternity. They're going to last even beyond us, that when we're gone, the impact and the disciples that we make and the amount of investment we put in the things of God, man, those things are going to last well beyond us. And so when we invest in missions and when we put our time into serving and building up the church and making disciples, those things are going to be the things that last, not the things that are here and now. And as Christians, as we mature and we taste and see, as the psalmist says, we taste and see who Jesus is, and we taste of this bread of life, and we recognize the satisfaction that only he can bring, our lives ought to look very different, because our lives ought to look more like eternity, right? More than just getting caught up here. Because what's going to happen is we're going to recognize that as we live in light of eternity, as we live in light of having experienced this bread of life, we're going to recognize that our lives are going to look very different than the people in the world. They ought to look very different, right? They ought to look like someone who our resources aren't going to be spent in the same way. The way we spend our time isn't going to be the same way. We might have to make sacrifices, right, in light of doing what Jesus is asking us to do, because we recognize that even though we might have to overcome stuff, even though we might have to conquer some stuff, as Revelation says, that there might be challenges and sacrifices that need to be made for being on mission, we're going to recognize that being on mission is the best place to be, because it's the place that's going to make a difference for eternity. That we're not just putting our lives in houses built on sand, but we're building our lives on rock, right? That's going to stay and be sturdy. And so as we finish up here, your home group leaders will have some questions to dive deeper into what it means to practically apply Jesus as the bread of life.